Well, we can go ahead and jump in. I'll just have to keep my eye on the screen for anybody who comes joining later. All right, so we're on page 32 of Sri Sharda Devi and her divine play, God as Mother, God as the Divine Mother, which we talked a little bit last time and the time before about why God, the infinite, would manifest as, I guess in the Vedanta tradition, God, when he incarnates or she incarnates, she always incarnates as male and female. We're on page 32, Priya. So, so God incarnates both as male and female. And this time, interestingly enough, at least in, I guess, the faith I'm building, he came in three as a Ma, Thakur, and Swamiji. And, I think there's a reason for that. I mean, it's interesting that all three of those incarnations represent a full and yet completely different aspect of the divine, in that you relate to each of them very differently. And I found in my life that there have been periods of time where God as Mother really rushed into the rescue, and then God as a Father or God as Guru rushed in through Thakur, and then, Big Brother Vivekananda comes in blazing new trails all the time. And each one of them has come in at different times. For me, I started purely as a devotee of Mother in the late 90s and probably the first half of the 2000s. And then at some point I have this imagining that Mother handed me off to Thakur to kind of help build up my discipline a little bit. And then when I took sannyas, really Vivekananda came swooping in to give me something to say, since suddenly I was being asked to do that. And so it's interesting because at different times I felt really different things about them. I say, kind of chuckling a little bit, Vivekananda, I didn't like him for a long time. I just thought always he was so blustery and, loud, and manliness and all of this kind of stuff. And I was just like, yeah, I don't understand that. But it comes in. He came in later after I'd been in the monastery for about 10 or 12 years. Suddenly that became very attractive. And so I think that God is that way. And, I've broadened it in my own mind recently to even more so that all the incarnations come in at different times, and all of the different practices have different emphases at different times. And in saying that, I want to be sure that you should always be rooted in your tradition and rooted with your guru and with your own chosen ideal. But there's no problem with expansion on that theme, on that notion. So as you grow, there's going to be a period of time where you want a little less emotion in there as you go through a certain period. And so Buddha will step in, or Vivekananda will step in. Or there'll be a time when you're really hurting and you really need some nurturing, and Mother is available. And sometimes you need some expansion. You need to break out of a rut, get a bigger vista of what's happening. And Thakur is there. And sometimes love and service comes in, and Jesus is there, And so in these ways that God really ultimately uses everything, not just all the incarnations, but also just every single thing in your day as a means of teaching, as a means of communicating, as a means of communing with us. And so we're doing the chapter right now of Sri Sharda Devi in her beginning years, her birth and early life. And so today we're going to start off with Aghoramani Devi, Sharda's friend, childhood friend in Jai Rambati. So Aghoramani Devi, Sharda's village companion and playmate, said, Sharda was straightforward. Okay, that straightforwardness is that non-complicity, inside. No, there's not It comes from being present in the moment, because you're not calculating out means of achieving desire, which is often what makes us insincere, because we start working on things not as they are, but for some particular end. And to work on something for a particular end is actually insincere, because you're not working through an inner expression of a self, of a defined nature, but you're working for a selfish gathering of something else. And so that sincerity the scriptures talk about is what is encapsulated in this idea of this simplicity of Sri Sharda here, this straightforwardness. It also somewhat sheds some light on that idea of that inner integrity between what you say, what you do, and what you think. That those three things should always be in alignment. That to the degree that those are not in alignment, to that degree, spiritual life is difficult. Right? So if you're not living a life that you're thinking about, that your thoughts, your words, and your deeds aren't aligned, then your self-control is going to suffer because you're not unified inside. It's part of the cause of our seeing duality, right? We've mentioned there's various ways actually that we can break ourselves into multiple people inside. And when we have more than one going on inside, then of course we perceive the world as multiple, as more than one. And so part of purifying the mind is removing that me and mine, which is the fundamental cause of seeing other and making distinction, and thus giving birth really to this dual world that we live in, but are never quite fully convinced of. And so here in Sri Sharda, we see that already her companion's saying the first word they use to describe her is straightforward, somebody who says what they think and do. Someone who's simple in their nature, not complicated in calculating desires and future anticipations. Sharda was straightforward, the embodiment of simplicity. She never quarreled with her playmates. Right? So that indicates something quite special for a child who never quarrels with her playmates. Really would speak to that idea of unity, which was the source of her straightforwardness, her simplicity. Was that early recognition of divinity in herself and others. And so if you see the world from that divine perspective, then everything is easily digested. There's no conflict. There's no quarreling, because love is your dominant inner experience, right? If you can find that shrine within, which we're always talking about, and we always will, that inner shrine, if you can find that silent absolute within you, then your interior experience is of love. And whatever your interior experience is, that will be others' experience of you. There's that wonderful scripture that that wonderful statement that Thakur makes, as is a man's meditation, so is his love. And as is his love, so is his accomplishment or his advancement, his growth. So if you have that interior silence, that interior love, that the love and meditation, really love and stillness, love, stillness, and meditation. Meditation is what makes you aware of your inner nature, aware of love, and learning to dwell in the company of that inner nature, that image of God or the self, your true nature, is to have that love become your inner experience and therefore flow out. And so the world sees that and receives that from you without effort. It's not a matter of complication or a matter of intention. It's just a matter of being. You are that loving person that you've always imagined yourself to be. You are that wise person you've always imagined yourself to be. And it's not through effort that we reach it. It's through surrender. All of our effort is toward a surrender, not toward an accomplishment in that. She never quarreled with her playmates. Indeed, when they fell out with one another, she acted as a mediator and a peacemaker. And blessed are those peacemakers, right? So that person who's able to withdraw their own ego, and then also is able to know how to move and navigate to help others be released from ego, right? Because all quarreling, all distinction, all separation or idea of other comes from ego. That's what ego is always doing. Ego is taking things that are coming in through the senses and seeing what their differences are, defining them as objects, storing them in the mind, and then going through the exercise of drawing relationships between them, trying to bring them back into a unity. And so this idea of being a peacemaker is the idea of being without ego. And being without ego, you can see more clearly the minds of others. And because you're able to see each of the positions, you can play that role of mediator or of peacemaker, bringing people back together again. And, that's something we all imagine or desire ourselves to be. She loved to make images of Kali and Lakshmi and worshipped the goddesses with flowers and bell leaves. Other villagers remarked, from her very childhood, Sharda was extremely intelligent, right? And everybody would say the same of everybody who has removed that sense of me and mine. Because what manifests when you remove the me and mine, when you remove that ego or that personality, the ego which manifests as personality, when you get that curtain pulled out of the way, what comes through is your intelligence. It's your nature, Satchitananda, So your intelligence and your love become your dominant features when we're able to remove that veil, that curtain of ego, of me and mine. She was extremely intelligent, quiet, right? Thakur says that quietness comes when you're satiated. He talks about the dinner, at the beginning, everybody's chit-chatting and talking, but he says by the end of the meal, all you hear is the sup of people, it's always kind of hard to take as a Westerner at the table when everybody in India is supping that last little bit of the sweet curd or of the what do they call that sweet rice or something, the dessert, that at that time of the meal everybody's no longer talking anymore. They're just enjoying the dessert in their satiation. And so this quietness is one of Sharda's qualities. And each one of these qualities, the reason I'm going through them like this is because Sharda was an incarnation. She didn't have her own qualities. What she was manifesting were our qualities, the qualities that are universal, that are what we are when we're pure, when we're free from ego and delusion. Sharda is coming into the world as a young woman with all of those natural evocations or manifestations of herself shining bright already. She doesn't have that ego covering that would cause her to be seen as just ordinary. She was always beloved. You see in Thakur the very same thing. So of course, Jesus also, when he was in the temple talking about spiritual things at the age of 7 with some of the pundits there. From her very childhood, she was extremely intelligent, quiet, and well-behaved. She always worked enthusiastically. Right? How is that possible, to always work enthusiastically? I mean, she had a limited number of opinions, right? So it wasn't about whether she wanted to work or not, whether she felt like getting up or not, whether she, was in the mood to help or not. Because she had a pure mind, a clear mind, a silent mind, a quiet disposition, none of that nonsense had to play the part. She didn't have to express a desire from the mind from being identified with it, or a laziness in the body from being identified with it. She was always enthusiastic to do the thing for its own nature, for its own sake, as an expression of what she is, and not as a calculation for what she wants. And that's the big difference. That's the nature of karma yoga, is that we work from inside through inspiration. We're inspired to do things by our nature, by our love, by our wisdom, and that we're not working for a sustenance of ego. We're not working for a desire. You see, working for desire is the same as sustaining your ego. And ego is the veil. That's why it's so important that we minimize it or train it to become at least a ripe ego, where it works as the servant of the divine or a lover of God or the husband of the beloved, or however you want to relate to your beloved, is fine. That's taming the ego. Without that taming, none of these things would be said about any of us, let alone Sri Sharada. All right. From her very childhood, she was extremely intelligent, quiet, and well-behaved. She always worked enthusiastically. It was never necessary to remind her of her duties because she thoughtfully anticipated them and performed them cheerfully. Wow. Here I'm reminded immediately of Peace Pilgrim. Do you remember Peace Pilgrim? She was that woman that just renounced the world, walked out of her house one day and vowed 3 vows, really. 1, that she would never speak of anything but peace. 2, that she would walk until she was given shelter, and that she would fast until she was given food. And the reason I think of her in this instance is that at one point she was talking about service, and she said, life is service. She says, I am always standing like a butler in the corner of the dining room, waiting for my opportunity to serve, to appear, you know. She would always stand there. So her life was about watching and awareness for opportunity to serve, opportunity to love. And so here we see that in Sri Sharada, you know, that she is always ready to serve, always ready to give, and not in a way where like, oh, you know, it doesn't catch her by surprise, because her disposition is one of compassion. You know, you can see clearly what it means to be an incarnation, that as a child, you can be so aware of all of these aspects and manifest them, you know, even though so many of us adults are spending lifetimes trying to get even a hint of one of them. It was never necessary to remind her of her duties because she thoughtfully anticipated them and performed them cheerfully, because they were always in accordance with what she, quote, wanted to do. Why? Because her wants came from the source, from that Satchitananda. Her desires didn't come from body-mind. Her desires were the expression of an inherent nature. And that's what we're trying to get to, that pure realization that we've always wanted to do the right thing, that we've always wanted purity, that we've always wanted self-control, you know, that we've always wanted freedom, but we have been very confused in how to get them and how to manifest them, not realizing that they come from within. We try and capture them or build them from without. And so Sri Sharada here has already given us, just in the fact of her birth, just in the fact of her being, has already written a scripture. A scripture could already be written, you know, about her. It is inspiring to visualize Sharada's early life. She helped her mother husk paddy by operating the husking machine. Sometimes she cooked when Shyama Sundari was busy. The rice pot was so big and heavy that Sharada could not lift it, so she had to ask her father for help. Sharada collected water from the Banerjee's pond and carried it home, balancing a pitcher on her hip like other village women. While bathing, she learned how to swim by holding an empty pitcher upside down and using it as a float. Sharada later recalled a heartbreaking incident that happened in 1864 when she was just 11 years old. Once, there was a terrible famine in Jairambati. Many starving people came to our house for food, as our previous year's surplus rice was stored in a bin. My father arranged to have several potfuls of khichdi made with that rice, mixing it with lentils. He said, all the members of the family will eat this simple food and share it with others, but a little good rice should be cooked for my Sharada. See, she's, what a sweetness of a father toward his daughter. But, you know, if you give birth to the divine, you know, look at the way that Mother Mary, you know, looked upon Jesus with such a marveling in his young days, you know, as she slowly realized the nature of what had happened when she gave birth to him. And so you can only imagine in your home, if you gave birth to God as mother, God as little Sharada, And you saw all these qualities consistently through her life, an absence of moods, an absence of rebellion, and an absence of selfishness. And you just saw that continuously. And here, in a situation where there's famine in the land, people are going hungry, and your whole family is eating just plain khichdi. And yet there's that impetus to worship, that impetus to serve the divine in little Sharada, and to give her a little bit of extra, pure rice that hasn't been mixed in with the lentil and veggies and whatever else they could find to throw in there. Sometimes the hungry people came in such numbers that the khichdi would run short and a fresh supply had to be cooked. When the fresh, hot khichdi was served on the leaf plates, I used to fan it to cool it off quickly. Oh, people suffered unbearable hunger pain as they waited. You see what she's looking at, she's alleviating that suffering. And it's not good enough just to be alleviating suffering. I mean, look at the family being so generous with their own leftover rice. But that even the time that it took for her to cool the khichdi after cooking it for them was causing her some pain inside, because she knew that their stomachs were so hungry that just even waiting that little extra bit of time was causing them trouble. One day, a low-caste woman with shaggy hair and bloodshot eyes came to the house. Unable to bear her hunger, she rushed to the cowshed and began to eat the soaked rice powder from the tub meant for the cattle. We repeatedly told her to come inside the house and eat khichdi, but she was too impatient to wait. Only after eating some rice powder did she listen to our calls. What a terrible famine! After experiencing that suffering, people began to garner paddy during the harvesting time. Is hunger a small thing? Hunger and thirst remain as long as a person has a human body. What a strange thing to say. But even in that compassion, she knew, most of our suffering comes from our identity with body and mind. Actually, all of our suffering, why much of it? All of our suffering comes from the body and the mind. And not so much from the body and mind, but from our identity with body and mind. When you're not identified with body, you don't really care all that much about it. If you're not identified with mind, the same. The senses don't really have much power when you don't think they're yours, when you're not putting your attention on them. There's no greater, there's no greater witness to this fact than to watch my brothers and I. I'll here list one of my greatest shames from being a teenager is I can remember those days where my two brothers and I would be sitting down, come home from school, and we'd be sitting in front of the TV watching the cartoons or whatever. And my mom would be just working to death out mowing this big yard outside. And, she would occasionally call in, can someone just come out and help a little bit? And, we didn't even hear it. It didn't even hear mom, asking us to help. It's like you just filter things out that you don't want to hear, that you don't want to deal with, become selective like that. And so this the power of the senses is not a great power. What makes it a great power is your power of attachment, your power to identify with the senses. And then they become very powerful if they represent something that the body wants or the mind wants, and you hence own that desire as being your own. I want this or I want that. But really, you don't want anything. There is no desire in the soul. The soul is perfectly content. And so when you have a desire, that's a good indication. That's a good time to sit and discern. Where is this desire coming from? Is it a desire of mind, or is it a desire of body? And and then you sort it out. And just even that little bit of an exercise will diminish its power when you realize its source is mind or its source is body. And then you determine in your own nature, in your own self, whether you're going to fulfill that desire or not. Is it reasonable or not? Is it a healthy desire or not? Is it helpful, to fulfill it or not? And if it turns out that it's fine, then you go ahead and have your dinner, go ahead and take your nap, whatever it is. But after having sussed it out so that you're not a slave, you make a decision in there. You're not just led by the nose after every desire that arises in front of you, but you're discerning because you're dwelling where? You're dwelling in the soul. You're dwelling in that part of you that's self-contented, that has no desire for anything more or anything other. It is, and that's enough. This terrible scene of hunger and poverty became deeply imprinted on little Sharada's mind. Later, she herself experienced both. Only one who has experienced hardship understands another's suffering. She learned to feel for others during the early days of her life, and this empathy is the basis of religion. Despite the advancement of civilization, science, technology, millions of people go to bed every night with an empty stomach. This is true even in the richest countries of the world. Sharada learned from Ramakrishna that the practice of religion is not possible on an empty stomach. Throughout her life, Sharada enjoyed feeding people. She cooked for her husband and later cooked for her disciples and her devotees. Yeah, this is one of those things, you know. It's one of those hard teachings, really, or points to one of those hard teachings. You know, we often have questions for God, like, why God could you create such a universe where people suffer like this? And I found as I grow older in my spiritual life that I'm asking myself that when I ask God that. And I find that I'm responsible for much of it. Why? Because there's plenty of food in the United States to feed everybody in the United States, and there's plenty of food in the world to feed everybody in the world. It's our selfishness, it's our attachment, you know, that only keeps our portion for us and doesn't go and give. You see how he ends the chapter by pointing out that Sri Sharada learned from this, the service of everyone, that she eventually, you know, you see it all through the gospel, in the cracks of the gospel, where she's, you know, making chapatis and making khichdi and making milk, you know, for Thakur and taking care of him. You see that her expression came out of her role as a woman in those days, you know. And so for us, that's a hint. Look at your natural place in the world. Look at where you exist and look around for how to use it to serve, to become that butler that the Peace Pilgrim became, standing in the corner, just looking for opportunities to care, you know, to help out. And this can manifest in so many different ways. You know, find out who the elderly people are in your community, and do they need help mowing their lawn? Do they need help painting their house? Do they need help vacuuming their living room? You know, become aware, get to know your neighbors. How can you serve your neighbors if you don't even know them? You know, I remember as a child growing up in the military, one of the very nice cultural things within the military community is that any time you move into a house on a base, you know, because everybody moves all the time, everybody's aware, there would always be a group of 4 or 5 women that would show up at the house on that first day or two with a fully cooked dinner and some whatnots for the house. You know, as you move in, it was always the welcoming committee. And so, you know, in life, be that, you know, be the welcoming committee for everyone. Get to know your neighbors. Just go over and make up an excuse to find out who lives there and whatnot. And every now and then check in on them. You know, if they're sick and you don't know them and you don't know that, how can you serve them? So find out. You know, Shiva in Hollywood, you know, was such a great man at that. He would always come in at the beginning of the meal and make his announcements every day, which I, of course, now admire and think deeply of. At the time, I was just utterly annoyed by them. But he would come in and make announcements about, oh, such and such. And it would always be some obscure person that everybody else had to sit there and think, oh, who's that? Who's that? Oh, yeah, she came like 5 years ago. And Shiva would know how she was and that she was in the hospital, and he would tell everybody, and he would organize a group of people to go down. I'm going to go down tomorrow. Somebody come with me, you know, to visit such and such. And so that's what it's like to activate your nature, you know, to become that butler standing in the corner looking around the room, watching closely at any sign of anybody needing anything, and being available to provide it. And so that's how we do these things. Break out of the norm. Get out, meet your neighbors, get out, meet people. When you're walking down the street in the city, keep your eyes open for things that you can do to help somebody, trying to unlock their bicycle and hold their groceries at the same time. A simple thing like that. Just wander along, walk down the street, find someone's trash can tipped over, pick it up, fix it for them. I remember Lalita, who I tell stories about, who's quite severely disabled now. When she and I used to take walks in San Francisco, I always used to be a little bit embarrassed because she would pick up trash as we walked on the walk, and then she would find some trash can somewhere and put it in there. But she was always mindful of things like that. I remember one time that I was most uncomfortable. There was a guy sitting in a driveway in a convertible, and he was just sitting there running the engine. And, we walked by, and she just turned to him and says, "Hey, do you really need to run that engine right now? It's wasteful. Just turn it off and start it when your friend comes out." And the guy just looked at her like, "Who are you, who are you to tell me that?" And really, it's true. But who is she? She's the divine. She's the voice of reason, and she did it in a desire to serve in the bigger and broader sense. So be bold like that. Look for those opportunities. Train yourself to see others' needs. Right? Train yourself to be aware of others' needs. It's very hard to do because our mind is so focused on our own needs, our own lives, our own purpose, our own days, our own fulfillment. But that is all how we break out of selfishness. This is how we challenge our stories to become larger. And so this is what Sharada has done. She has seen the hunger of everyone, and she dedicated her life to that, to alleviation of suffering by being a mother to everyone. She didn't draw a line to a physical family. Everybody was her family, and her practice was to always increase that sense of the needs of everyone around us. And that's how we are as people who are returning to our nature, who are uncovering what we've forgotten about ourselves and trying to live anew and trying to rise up in a new way. Chapter 3, Marriage and the Early Years. O Ramakrishna, you acted well by performing the dharma as a householder with Sharada Devi. You made your dwelling place in the temple garden of Dakshineshwar, sanctified by the heavenly river Ganges. According to the Hindu tradition, the impersonal God is existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute. Brahman, or the impersonal God, is formless, but the personal God has form, and he is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. He is ever free, ever perfect, and ever pure. The personal God is endowed with the power to create, to preserve, and to destroy. This power is called Shakti, or Mahamaya, the Divine Mother. Shiva and Shakti, the male principle and the female principle, are inseparable, like fire and its power to burn, or milk and its whiteness. Both are necessary for creation. And so I'm going to take this opportunity to talk about our little our little proposition that Shiva is pure mind, the mind with no thought, the absolute potential, unchanging. And that Shakti is the mind with thought, the creative power, the preservation power, the destruction power. And you cannot separate pure mind and active mind, or still mind and active mind, because they're one and the same. There's really not a separation there, like milk and its whiteness, like a fire and its heat. And so within you and your very own experience, you're able to see Shakti. When you're watching your thoughts as the observer, as the witness, that is what you're doing. You are watching Shakti. Everything that comes in through the senses and is displayed to you in the mind is a display of the power of Shakti, how she can take your empty mind and create an entire universe in it for you to experience. So Shakti is within you, and Brahman, Well, yeah, I'm going to get in trouble if I say Brahman's within you, because it's not true. If your sense of you is egotistical, if it's particular, but the non-particular self and Brahman are one and the same. And so when Shakti is active, when that power of God is acting within the mind, from that comes your sense of self. That power of Maya, Mahamaya, coming in and swirling up a story of thought that you identify with and live in and maintain as yourself. But really, the whole universe is within you. That's right. The whole universe is within the mind only. The mind is everything, Sri Ramakrishna says. And so you are experiencing not an external world and not this external powers of God, but within your very own self. You are the portal where the two find their unity. You have active mind and you have silent mind, both potentials within you. And just by being detached, that reveals Brahman behind, that absolute, that unchanging. So here we see that just in the way that she's talking here, that the nature of your true self, ever free. What is it? Ever free means to have no desire. That is freedom. Not the freedom to fulfill desire, but the freedom from desire, where when you stop, you can just stop because you're absolutely content wherever you are. Nothing is needed. That's freedom. And your nature is freedom. The nature of Brahman is freedom, deep within. What's he say? Ever free. Yeah. He's, where did I see that freedom? He is ever free, ever perfect, right? No imperfection. What's an imperfection? An imbalance. It's imbalance that causes desire, right? And you get out of balance when you stop believing that you are the whole and start believing that you're just a part. And in that believing that you're just a body, well, you're this body. This body's not always full. It's not always healthy. It's not always comfortable. And so you come out of balance by identifying with it. And then desire is born. So to be ever perfect is to know your nature as the divine self, the soul, ever pure, ever free. So there is no need for anything. And that ever pure, we always define ever purity as no me and mine. Without me and mine, there can be no impurity. And so to not have that sense of I attached to anything small or particular is to be ever pure, ever free.
Swami,
yes.
do you think that I'm never detached from my body?
Do I think what?
Do you think that we could not stop identifying with our body?
That to stop identifying with body.
Is that like possible for people on our level?
Well, as soon as you say on our level, no. Because immediately you're going to identify with an imperfection. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. Thakur says all of this is possible. God does not.
Practical. I mean.
Well, be careful with that word too. Practical from what perspective? Ignorance is never practical. We define practicality by living in ignorance, and we call practicality a means of living with ignorance. Outside of ignorance, absolutely, it is only practical to be in that state. So yes, we can. And it's important that we believe and know that, because any limitation that we put in to the ideal will be a blinder for us. So as an ideal, yes, it's possible. Yes, because it's your nature. Yes, because it's actually already true within you. It's all of this ignorance is a belief to the contrary. It's not an actuality to the contrary. It's just a belief, a system of thoughts that you've owned in your mind that are presenting to you a contrary notion. But in fact, you are already disidentified with the body because you're not the body. So in there, it's already there. That's how you can know this right? Because you wake up in the morning, you don't know how you are immediately. You kind of have to scan your body. And then you decide, oh, I'm tired. Oh, my back hurts. I must have slept wrong. Oh, I've got a kink in my neck. But you have to discover these things. If you were the body, you wouldn't have to discover them. You would have known them immediately, instantly. At the same time they happen, you would be aware of them. So you see that you're not the body already, because you have to observe the body to know its conditions. I know those times when I get that weird taste in the back of my mouth and I'm thinking, oh, I think I'm getting sick. And so then I do a body scan. Is there anything else in there that's indicating that I'm getting sick? What kind of sickness is this that's coming? So we know we're not the body. So yes, it's possible, because it already is the truth. And not being the mind, exactly the same, right? How do we know what we're thinking? Because we observe it. Well, if we observe it, we obviously are not it. If you're looking at something, it's not you. You're separate from it. You're looking at it. So yes, it's possible because it's already true. But it's also possible to be so convinced that it's not already true that it doesn't seem like it's ever attainable. But see, it's not a matter of attainment. It's a matter of realization, which means it's already true in you. You just haven't let yourself believe it yet. Now, can you be that way and function in the world? Yes, you can. Look at Thakur, look at Jesus, look at Buddha, look at Rama, look at Krishna, look at Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, Vivekananda. They all knew who they were. They were all realized souls. Now, did they all work at a gas station, in order to earn enough money to buy an engagement ring for their new sweetheart? No. From that perspective, it's not practical. But from the perspective of being a true human being, a being that doesn't live for your own desires and your own needs, but lives for the love and welfare of others, it's imminently practical, imminently possible. And in fact, it is what you are already. And so, in that sense. Now, there are times when it's not practical in our definition, in the sense that Ramakrishna, when he had that samadhi, that nirvikalpa samadhi, the unity, and he basically laid on the ground for 6 months, and his assistants had to keep rolling him to different positions so he wouldn't get bed sores, and had to dribble milk and smashed rice into his mouth to keep him alive. Is that practical? Well, how are we going to measure that? For him, yes, it was practical. He enlightened the world. He's given us these teachings and these messages. And without that experience, without that expression, we would have no idea of its possibility. So in one sense, eminently practical. But was he able to take care of himself for those 6 months? Absolutely not. Did he have to? Absolutely not. So yes, it's returned to practicality again, because Mother provided someone to take care of him. So yes, it's absolutely possible, because it already is. We just have to accept it and live accordingly. That's all. That's all. So yes, what's that?
Thank you.
Sure. All right. Very good. So this principle inside of us, we have the male principle and the female principle, the absolute unchanging representing the male for whatever reason, and the power of that representing female for whatever reason. And both of them are necessary. You can't have one without the other. You sometimes run into people who think all men should die or all women should go away. But that's not our nature, and it's not possible, because first of all, not all of us are one of anything. In reality, we are that ever-free absolute. This is just a manifestation. But if you understand that we are manifesting everything, that the whole world exists only between your ears, then you are every man and every woman, and you are no particular. And so that's the ultimate truth. That's why I commend, to the folks who are, wrestling with their genders in a way, because they have an awareness of a higher truth. The problem is that they think they're another gender, or they want to define it as something else. That's the problem in it. but it's a sign of deep insight to wonder, oh, because there are many sages who answered that question like, I don't know if I'm a man or a woman, because they reach that perspective, they reach that understanding, where they know that they are not male or female. And so that's our reality. Now, these are very high teachings, but only because we're very low. If we had not enjoyed our ignorance so much, these wouldn't even be high teachings. These would be obvious teachings, because we would be closer to natural, closer to what we always were, always have been. So, but both are necessary and both exist within you. You know man because you know woman, and vice versa. But we know, once we know the self, we know ourself to be neither or both, that they are the full manifestation. When the personal God takes a male form as a human being, he comes with his Shakti to fulfill his mission. Even though born as a human being, an avatar is endowed with divine qualities. God is beyond all limitations. He is neither a monk nor a householder. Maya cannot bind him. Marriage is considered to be a bondage for others, but it is not so for an avatar. Some avatars were married, such as Ramachandra and Krishna. Some renounced their wives and became monks, such as Buddha and Chaitanya. Some were lifelong monks, monastics, such as Jesus and Shankara. Ramakrishna married and then took monastic vows, but he did not renounce his wife. He accepted a woman, Bhairavi Brahmani, as his guru, and he preached the motherhood of God. His chosen ideal was the Divine Mother. His wife became his first disciple. So this is that just shining example of, it's not the externals that are the problem. Oh, should I be a monk? Do I have to be a monk to realize God? Oh, I'm a householder. Will I ever realize God? How am I supposed to? You're not. Why start a sentence with I'm a householder or I'm a monk? Start the sentence with I'm ever free and ever pure. How do I express that as a householder? How do I express that as a monk? How do I express that as neither? This is our question. You are that already. No need. Just figure out how you're going to express your real nature through whatever condition appears before you, any limitations that are there. But be free first and then express second. Don't look at your limitations and identify them and then have them identify you. Be that first, be love first, and then figure out, how does a woman express pure love? How does a householder express pure intelligence? Like that. So she's just pointing out here, and really in an important way, especially in Indian culture, he had a female guru. He was a monk. He was a married monk. He was a householder, but he was a celibate. He had no children, and yet everybody were his children. Everybody was his children. Oh boy, I need an English teacher. And his wife becomes his first disciple. So, which is to say, another avatar became his disciple. So you see how everything, up, down, left, right, all any which way, that it's not the world itself that has any meaning. It's what meaning you, as the source of the world, give everything. And that is completely flexible and fluid within you. It only doesn't seem that way because of the karma you've accepted as being your own, and because of the limitations that you've accepted as being yours, as being you. And that has given you a particular view of a particular role or a particular limitation. But that everything about us that makes us particular is just a limitation or a restriction that we've simply identified with. And a limitation and a restriction in the simple thought that it's just a thought. But you've held on to that thought and made it concrete and decided to own it, to wear it. And so you have to experience it. And that's what colors our view of the world. But it's not that we're this and we have to look and become that. We have to realize that we're not this. so that we can be that. A very different arrangement. The village of Sihar is the birthplace of Ramakrishna's nephew, Hriday, and also of Sharada's mother, Shyamasundari. It is famous for the Shantinath Shiva temple, where pilgrims from neighboring villages regularly go for worship. When Ramakrishna came to Karmapur from Calcutta, he invariably visited Sihar and stayed some days with Hriday. Once a famous singer came to Sihar and gave a performance at Hriday's house when Ramakrishna was visiting. Shyamasundari was then at her father's home with Sharada, who was 3 years old at the time. The mother and daughter went to listen to the performance. When the performance was over, a village woman teasingly asked Sharada whom of the boys she would like to marry. With a tiny finger, she pointed at Sri Ramakrishna. So there it is. What point can we make from that? Pretty much any of them. But I like to just giggle about it rather. Point out any particular one. But she was aware. You see, they have their whole life in particular times. Not always. Sometimes they also get a slight veil. It's just that their veil is really more of a matter of everybody's veil is a matter of choice. But their veil is significantly thinner, maybe, and a matter of much fewer choices than our series of choices. And so she would be aware of who she is. Thakur was aware. You see that on occasion of who he was. And Vivekananda on occasion was aware. As a matter of fact, with Vivekananda, we get a little bit of insight because the divine Thakur tells him, I'm going to lock your freedom, your awareness, your pure awareness in a box. And you can't have it until the time is right, until your work is done. And so, it requires some element of impurity, some element of me and mine to exist in mind in order to manifest. In order to manifest, if you don't have that sense of a particular about yourself, then you don't have that limitation. So I got distracted there because it looks like somebody was trying to get in and I didn't see them and they've gone. So anyway, I'll have to write him later. So a woman teasingly asked Sharada whom among the boys she would like to marry, and with a tiny finger she pointed at Ramakrishna. An asterisk there says Swami Sharadeshananda wrote in his Sri Mayur Smriti Katha that this incident took place at Sharada's maternal uncle's house in Sihar during a picnic. All right. While Sharada was growing up in rural Jairambati, Ramakrishna was practicing intense sadhana in Dakshineshwar. After having his first vision of the Divine Mother in 1856, his longing increased for uninterrupted communion with God. Completely God intoxicated, he became indifferent to food, to sleep, to clothing, and other necessities of life. He spent day and night in meditation and prayer. Okay. I can't just read that and let it lie there. He spent day and night in prayer. That is exactly what meditation is. It's becoming aware, like Brother Lawrence, more at our level, quote, our level. Brother Lawrence and his practice of the presence of the beloved, of the divine. Here we see that Sri Ramakrishna was so aware of that presence that it turned everything about him into prayer, with the divine. He was completely God intoxicated. Who is God? God is that unchanging absolute sitting in the shrine, quote, sitting in your shrine, in your heart, the unchanging absolute within you, the pure mind, the mind with no thought, sitting there exuding what? Satchitananda, exuding love, wisdom, existence, all three of which are your ego claims to create itself. He became indifferent to food, sleep, clothing, and other necessities of life. Indifferent because he realized fully that non-identity, that non-self. I'm not the body. I'm not the mind. and understood deeply that because of that, those things are things. Those things are thoughts in a universe of thoughts. One is no more real than the other, and I'm the observer of all. He spent day and night in meditation and prayer. His restless longing for God expressed itself in agonizing cries for the Divine Mother. This is something, Mother often gives us a taste of her. In Christianity, you read quite often, like especially in Brother Saint John of the Cross and Saint Teresa of Avila also, they talk about this wound, the wound of God. And what that is that Jesus gives you a direct experience. You have a direct touch of the divine somehow through a vision or through whatever. And it leaves a wound in the sense that it leaves a pain in you because the world can't give that to you. And yet you long for it. That's what you've been looking for in the world for your whole life. And suddenly it comes to you through a touch of the divine. And that's the bite of the cobra, according to Sri Ramakrishna. When that happens, it's only a matter of time, that you come to your freedom in that. And so this touch of God, quite often Mother does it. I always joke that she always does it in the beginning, and then she'll leave you untouched for a good decade or two. Just leave you there nursing your wound, your desire for God. And then at some point, when you truly are not content with anything in the world, but are searching only within, then she comes and picks you up and takes you to the kitchen. So his longing for God expressed itself in agonizing cries for the Divine Mother. And we see that in the gospel. And he asks us quite blankly, but quite upfront, bluntly. He asks, there are many who cry for money, for wealth, for hunger, for whatnot. But which of you will cry for God? He says, in this day and age, if you're able to cry for God for one day and one night, he says, you will have him. So it's your longing that's the limitation. And your longing is based on your delusion. What are you identifying with? What do you hold on to? Are you willing to let go? Because it's just a matter of surrender. It's not a matter of accomplishment. It's a matter of laying down everything, even the story of who you are, of what you are, laying that down in front of the divine. He shunned the company of worldly people. Now, why would he do that? Because they're bad? No, because they reinforce your story of who you are. They reinforce your ego because they see themselves as ego. And when they look at you, they're seeing an ego and they're talking to that ego and they have egoized expectations of that ego. They have all those social obligations and the maternal obligations and marital obligations and friendship obligations that they present to you because they have no idea of who they are. And so you get dragged into that. That's why holy company is one of the fastest ways to the divine, for that reason. Good holy company will always remind you of who you are. And they won't put all of those other odd expectations on you. They won't insist that you be a normal person around them. And he was incapable of functioning like an ordinary person. Because of his God-intoxicated state, he could not continue to perform the temple worship at Dakshineshwar, where he was a priest. And people said that he had gone mad. Indeed, gone mad. In what way? In the sense that he saw things as they were. Worshipping at a shrine is an absurdity if you're seeing God everywhere present and always perfect. Offering food to a statue when a living cat is walking through the shrine is an absurdity if you see that it's Kali herself who has become the cat who's walking through the shrine. So it's this insanity, this knowledge of self, which is so utterly different from anybody else's knowledge of themselves, that they call it insane. They think it's utterly crazy. You're totally crazy. You don't eat, you don't take care of yourself, you're always looking after others, whatnot. The owner of the temple considered his ecstatic state to be a mental illness and arranged for him to be treated. So, in that sense, you have an advantage if you're in a monastery. hopefully somebody there will recognize. So if you're going to go into samadhi, do it at the temple where somebody will know what's going on, so they don't call 911 on you. There is a saying in Bengal, words walk through the ears. The news of Ramakrishna's condition and his inability to continue his job as a priest reached his mother and brother Rameshwar in Kamarpukur. They were very concerned, and in September of 1858, they brought him home. Chandramani was very distressed when she saw her son's indifference to worldly matters and his seeming madness for God. She tried various remedies, including medicine, rites performed to propitiate the gods, and charms and incantations to exorcise evil spirits. However, Chandramani soon realized that her son was actually normal to a great extent. Without Ramakrishna's knowledge, she and Rameshwar began to search for a suitable bride. For various reasons, this was not so easy. Noticing that they were growing frustrated and anxious, Ramakrishna told them one day in an ecstatic mood, "Why are you so fruitlessly looking for the girl here and there? Go to Ramachandra Mukherjee's house in Jairambati, and you will find the girl there, tied, as it were, with a straw." This is an allusion, it says, to a local custom where the stem of a particular fruit destined to be offered to the deity is often tied with a straw to set it apart from other fruits. So that's kind of cool. So Sri Sharda was going to be offered directly to God. And he knew this, told them, "Why are you all struggling so much?" And he was in an ecstatic mood, which is cool. So you know this was his divine purpose, to do away once and for all with that argument that, oh my God, I'm a householder, I can't realize God. Because in fact, you can be God and be a householder at the same time. So of course you can realize God as a householder. And it's just as much your responsibility to do so as any Swami's responsibility to do so. It's the purpose of life. It's just a matter of how you do it. You express your divinity through your family, through your wife, through your children, through their friends, through your acquaintances, through your work. And you use all of that to manifest your pure nature, a nature that's free, not bidden by desire, a nature that's loving, not sickened with selfishness. That we take the conditions that appear in the dream and we express our unlimited self through them. No matter what we are, it doesn't matter. If we're anything, it's a manifestation of that. So always, just like Vivekananda says, always say, I'm free, I'm pure, I'm beloved of God. And don't forget it, because that's what manifests. That's what lives your life properly, is knowing that inside. Someone went to Jairambati and returned with the news that the prospective bride was only 5 years old. Ramakrishna was then 24. So this was not considered an ideal match. So we can rest assured in that anyway. So this was not considered an ideal match. Nonetheless, Chandramani decided to arrange the marriage. The negotiations were settled in a few days. Rameshwar paid 300 rupees for the dowry, and an auspicious day was chosen for the wedding in May of 1859. Swami Nikhilananda explained the mystery of this marriage. Early marriage for a Hindu girl, especially one living in a village, was not then uncommon. But such a marriage was really in the nature of the betrothal. The actual marriage took place after the wife attained maturity, when she and her husband lived together. Ramakrishna's marriage was, however, a strange one. Here was a bride in whom the consciousness of sex was not awakened and who remained free from it all through her life. And the bridegroom regarded all women as his own mother and the embodiment of the divine mother of the universe, an attitude which he maintained as long as he lived. At that time, because of his absorption in spiritual practices, he was oblivious of both his body and the world and was guided in every action by the Divine Mother herself, with whom he had established a most intimate relationship. Therefore, it may be presumed that in his marriage, he was guided by the finger of God. It served no human purpose for either of them, but it fulfilled a divine mission. For Sharada was destined to continue after his death his unfinished work of spiritual spiritual ministry. So we see, first of all, that divine, intimate relationship between Thakur and his mother. But you see how looking at Thakur, that marriage was completely impractical. I mean, here was a man that saw every woman as mother. Here was a man who had no concept of his body. Here was a woman that had no sexual identity whatsoever. She was 5 years old, but she maintained that purity of mind through her entire life. So a worldly person would look at that and be like, marriage, what in the world are you guys talking about? Well, marriage, what are you doing? But you see that even through that, Thakur demonstrating that, yes, even with that impossible arrangement of attributes, that marriage happened. And that marriage teaches us the nature of divinity, teaches us how to love with a pure love. You know, how Thakur was deeply devoted to the Divine Mother, deeply concerned and deeply in love, as it were, with the Divine Mother. A huge amount of respect for her, enormous respect, actually. And he warned his disciples quite often, you know, you can mess with me as much as you want, but if you anger that one, no one can help you. You know, there is no help for you. And so that you see that beautiful respect that Thakur had for the Divine Mother and that the Divine Mother had for Thakur. And you see in that the perfect marriage. For us.
You mean Holy Mother, don't you?
For Holy. What's that?
You're saying the Divine Mother, but you're meaning Holy Mother?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks. Yeah, so seeing that in Holy Mother. And so in that we see what a pure marriage is, what real marriage is. You know, in our worldly state, in our state of delusion about what we are, marriage is about sex and about children. But here Thakur is taking a much higher perspective, saying, no, look at this more closely. You can have a beautiful relationship with somebody, a deep and honest relationship with somebody that isn't sexual, that isn't about having your own biological children. And even in that absence of biological children, you can take the whole world as your children. You know, so he was just giving a completely different perspective on what it is to live life. You know, this is that it's so important because we identify with ourselves with these small things all the time and then get caught in small little eddies of pain around them, wondering, how do we get fulfilled? How do we know who we are and what we are? That's why I say, when you go to work, you know, if you're an accountant, remember you're only incidentally an accountant. Your job, your number one job at work is to love. Your number one job at work is to be wise, to be caring and compassionate. And incidentally, you're an accountant. So through that work, you manifest your love and you manifest your compassion. If you're a waiter, you're only incidentally a waiter. Your job is to love at that restaurant, to serve. And what an amazing opportunity you have, because you're actually directly serving someone. You know, so we should never forget who we are. Jobs are incidental. They're not identities. They're not what we are. Whatever you're doing, your only full responsibility is to love, you know, to be selfless, to care, to open that heart, to act wisely and consistently, you know, in that way. And so this is how we make this the purpose of our life, even though we're incidentally a busboy or a taxi driver or an engineer or a doctor. You know, all of those are just opportunities. They are the opportunities through which we practice the purpose of our life: to love, to care, to be wise. So we see that here, that even in this marriage, the purpose of the marriage was not for sex and propagation. The marriage was about service, about respect, about love, about expressing the divine qualities of being. That's everything, all the time, everywhere. On the day of the wedding, the village women clothed the handsome bridegroom with a dhoti and a chadar, decorated him with dots of sandal paste on his forehead, and placed a garland around his neck. Shakambari, Rameshwar's wife, was a little sad. Because of their poverty, they could not afford to hire a musician for the bridegroom's marriage procession. To cheer his sister-in-law, Ramakrishna imitated the sounds of a drum with his mouth and danced, slapping his hands on his hips like the village musicians. What do they call that nowadays, where people make those sounds with their mouth and beatboxing? Is that what it's called? So here you see the original beatboxer was Godhar himself at his own marriage. Thus he created a joyful atmosphere and everyone laughed. You see that? That's amazing. So you can take a situation where something's lacking that normally could really ruin the situation, and you make it a matter of joy. You know, you like him here. And he did it not for his own wedding or for his own self, but he did it in order to alleviate the embarrassment of Rameshwar's wife, you know, the sadness that she had in not being able to afford that. You know, this is what it is to be human. No limitation can hold back your expression of your nature. No condition can keep you from expressing what you are. And that joy is always accompanying what you are. You know, great love always brings great joy, great bliss. So he created a joyful atmosphere and everyone laughed. That, I think, is the first sign, or one of the major signs of being a spiritual person. Can you create joy, you know, simply by being, not by calculating joyful things, but you just walk into a room and it lights up. It's a better place because you're there. You know, and so that is what it is to be that butler of the divine, to walk into a room and immediately you're looking for opportunity to care, you know, to give of yourself. Rameshwar could not afford to hire a palanquin, so Ramakrishna and his companions walked 4 miles to Jairambati. The traditional wedding ceremony was performed in the old mud cottage of Sharada's family. To satisfy Sharada's parents and to maintain appearances, Chandra borrowed some jewelry from the wealthy Laha family for the bride to wear during the ceremony. Although Sharada's parents were poor, they tried their best to conduct the ceremony according to the scriptures. The whole family and many villagers were present. The priest repeated the mantras and, as was customary, the village women walked around the bride and the bridegroom in a circle holding 27 burning sticks. A piece of thread dyed with turmeric was tied between the groom's and the bride's waists to symbolize the bond between the two human beings. Accidentally, a burning stick burnt the connecting thread, which was extremely inauspicious. But who can change the will of Providence? Undoubtedly, marriage is a kind of bondage, but the Divine Mother destroyed that bond of ignorance and made it an extraordinary spiritual partnership. Sharada was a little girl of 5 who had almost no concept of marriage, and Ramakrishna was an illumined soul who had transcended the sense plane. I could see, I know some people were quite alarmed when that happened, when that string was burned between them. But what an apropos exactly, as Chaitananda is pointing out here, you know, that marriage was not a bondage for either one of them. It was an expression of the divine nature. And so it's again pointing out, you see, it's not the conditions that bind us. It's our manifestation according to those conditions that bind us. When we attach an I am to them, you know, but in and of themselves, they're opportunities. All limitation is an opportunity. You know, quite often artists, when they create something, will create a set of limitations first, because then you have to be creative to work within those limitations to manifest something, you know, something beautiful. And so your life is exactly that. Mother has given you a set of limitations, whatever they are. They're just conditions. They don't define you. They are not you. They're just simply the apparatus that you were given to use to manifest yourself, to manifest divine love, to manifest your divine wisdom, and to experience this incredible mystery this incredible mystery of being, of what existence is, and the opportunity that lies within it to see your ideal lived out in this body, mind, and set of limitations and restrictions. So freedom is yours already. Enjoy that freedom and let it manifest through whatever window you're shining, whether it's the window of a man or a woman, a single or married, gay or straight, any of them. You manifest love. You manifest love. You manifest you. Oh my gosh, 7:21. Wow. I would have kept you going till midnight if I hadn't tapped that screen. Sorry about that. So we'll stop there for today.
It kept going.
Yeah, I could definitely.
Big. I wasn't stopping you.
Yeah, when we're here. Saying anything, we're like,
Anyway, there it is. Sri Sharda Devi, manifesting God already, even as a child like that, through all of those things. All those things that we see as contrary to spiritual life, being a householder, being married, all those things that so often we talk about in weird ways. It's just not right. They are nothing in themselves. It's absolutely your attitude toward them that will make them freedom or bondage for you. You are that, ever free, ever pure, ever beloved of God. Do not think about your conditions and identify with them and bemoan their limit. Always find a way around them. Always manifest with what is available. And don't worry about anything else. Don't compare. Don't remember better days. There's no better day than the moment, because it's the only one you've ever had. All right, any questions? Any additions? Corrections? Jokes?
Can we call you Beatbox Maharaj now?
A beatbox Maharaj. Yeah, if I could do it at all. Yeah. No, I see those guys. Those guys are amazing.
We want West Side Swami.
West Side.
West.
West Side Swami.
Yes.
Oh boy. All right. It'd be a good time. It's a good time.
Started.
It's a good time to push that red button that says end. All right. Jai Ma, Jai Thakur, Jai Swami.
Jai Ma.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be well.
Be well.
Good night.